Hi, this is Michael Porter with Edge of Faith magazine. Today we're here with Sandy Ceas, founder of the Christos Collective. Sandy, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Good. Well, so maybe we should just start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background in the arts.
Okay. I feel like that I was born an artist. I've always had this kind of creative vision and exploratory nature. And I started off experimenting with the arts very young, but my parents didn't feel that that would be a successful career. So this was their graduating high school, early 70s, made it hard to think of that as a professional avenue. But I did go into fashion design, which my parents felt was an adequate way to do something in the
Pay
arts.
the bills.
Pay the bills. And it did for many, many years. And soon I reached a point where I had had enough of that, and I thought, I'm going to return to be an artist. Because I believe that people that feel like they're born an artist will always go back to it. They feel like
It's a calling.
It's a calling, and they have to return to it or you're unsettled your whole life, finding a way. I mean, I teach older adults now in a studio art class, and many of them are retired and returning to something that they loved. So I got a chance to do that, and I went on to get a number of degrees from that point on. I got my BFA, my MFA, and then I got another MA in religious studies.
Wonderful.
Because I was trying to figure that out. Why, if I've been gifted with this talent to envision things that are unseen and to turn them into something creative, and then I have this very, very strong spiritual life and my connection with the Lord, how do I put those two together? And I think that's why I went to get those 2 degrees, to see if I could elevate myself and connect the 2 dots, and I'm kind of there now, trying
So
to go
hopefully
forward.
that did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, now that we kind of get an idea of who you are, maybe the Christos Collective. Tell us what that's about and what inspired you to create it.
Okay. So right after my MFA, my Master's in Fine Arts, I was making work, selling work, starting to develop a name, but it became object, dollar, object, dollar. And I felt like this is not working for me. And that's why when I went on to the further education in the religious studies, I started sensing that I needed to find a way to bring this together. So my work changed more into what became known as social practice art. So I probably spent at least a decade getting known for using my arts to bring people together in community, to raise issues about social injustice, to help agencies come in with their agendas to move it along for a cause. I could see that art had far more power than the commercial aspects of it. So I was developing these skills of art for agency, art as catalyst. And I was doing it for a number of organizations for very good reasons, for justice reasons. But I woke up one morning and I realized I can do this specifically for the Lord. I can figure this out.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's where we got where we are today then. So tell us a little bit more about the Christos Collective.
Yeah, that's how Christos started to form. I think the Lord was talking in my ear for a few years until that morning I woke up and said, I could hear him loud and clear, it's time to do something about this. And my husband and I lived in the top of a mountain up in Deer Creek Canyon in a house that nobody drove up to because it was a quarter-mile dirt road and really difficult to get to. Yet, I reached out to a number of artists that I knew, asked them to see if they had friends, and some members of another artist group with a Christian base. So I reached out probably to about 30 artists to see if they would come to my home to meet up, to address my calling, and to see if they wanted to be part of reclaiming God's voice in art. So I put out the call, and that evening my doorbell just kept ringing and ringing until 12 people showed up. So that was the beginning of Christos Collective. 12 random people.
Almost like disciples.
Totally. I felt that way exactly that night. I thought this was excellent. And some people knew each other for other reasons within the group, But as I've been with Christos now for 5 years, I can see that that's how God works. He's just moving us around and people, connections are being made. So we launched about 5 years ago as a group of a dozen artists making art, encouraging each other in our critiques to reach excellence and to help each other get exposure. In galleries, we pooled our money to get space to exhibit. We reached out to universities and churches to see if they would exhibit our work. So we were just kind of working around as a group, trying to develop ourselves as a community, but also as a stronger artist. And we did that as an LLC for close to 5 years.
And now you're a 501c3. We're throwing all these acronyms out, right?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
As well, LLC is a limited liability
Right.
corporation, so we were incorporated in that sense, so I could separate my taxes and things. But I also then heard the calling from the Lord to say it's time to go nonprofit, because you're trying to sustain yourself internally with the dollars of the artists who are starving already. So how do we turn this around so maybe we can get some support? And just walking on faith, I wrote for a grant to get a pro bono lawyer, and we did. So that was the first sign that we're on the right path. And she walked us through and got us to apply for this, and within 6 months we had obtained it. And it is retroactive, so it's all the way back to January 1st of 2019. We dissolved our LLC in December of 2018. So officially we became incorporated as a nonprofit, and then federally approved about 6 months later.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, now that you've got all that in order, what are some of your visions or goals for the upcoming year?
When I could see that we would be successful at getting the nonprofit and becoming a different form of entity, I thought we needed to shift our focus to make it so we were more missionary or mission-minded. Mission-minded internally toward the artists who feel like they've been called, but also using those talents and gifts to go out into the larger sector, so we can be part of something bigger. And that put me in my business mind to go back and create what I call programming. So Christos Collective, we developed a programming that we could bring to churches or to universities or to any kind of operation that would be interested in us coming in to put up an art exhibition, to come in as artists to talk about our art, either in a panel, artist talks, some way of education, and then hopefully even do some kind of community engagement so we can serve their public. If they have somebody that they work with and they want to use our talents to create something around their own agendas, so we can share and collaborate with them. Kind of a partnership is what we were looking for.
Right. And this is all focused primarily on church and artists, or is it more broad than that?
We want it to be more broad, but we were pushed out of the secular art world. We were ostracized, we were not welcomed. We really struggled, and it was my call to say, well, let's go back home into the church first and let them launch us out there. Let's see if they can empower us and really get behind us and launch us out into that world, because we weren't equipped well to be out there. That doesn't mean we don't individually as artists in the group.
Right.
We do that, and try to take our worldview into our art in that regard. But it had been difficult. So we did target churches and universities at first.
And there's some education that has to go on there as well, right? Because some churches aren't as in-depth on, or adept on art and the sacred place for art in the church.
Yes, I think they all have the heart for that, and they get excited when they think about bringing this dimension into the church. They have the music, they have all kinds of other kinds of creative encounters with their congregations, but they didn't quite know how to use the arts. And I think that's where I thought we had a unique situation, because it's not easy to curate a show, install a show, and make it look like one impactful work of art. So you have people within the church wanting to put art on the walls, so they end up just putting art on the walls. And it does, you're missing an opportunity. So, and not to say that these people shouldn't do that, but they may not have the history or the qualifications to know how to do it with excellence. So as a collective, in my experience, we come in and say, we are a pre-curated show for you, ready to install. We even have a professional installer as one of our artists. So we come in, lickety-split, goes on the walls, looks great. We're willing to stand behind it, stand with our work, talk to the congregations or the people and share how we got to where we're doing, what our work looks like. So we're offering kind of a package deal.
That's pretty wonderful.
We think so.
And exciting. I'm excited for the collective. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us and for actually just starting the collective so that you can educate the church and beyond, right?
Hopefully beyond, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Talking with Christos Collective artist Melissa Pape. So, Melissa, speaking of creative things and things that move people, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your piece, That They May Live.
Yes, I am part of a group called Christos Collective, and we currently have a show at Denver Seminary with the theme of resurrection. And as I was praying about what God wanted me to create for that show along the theme of resurrection, the passage from Ezekiel 37 where he has a vision of the valley of mine. So as I was reading that scripture, just researching it, and looking at other people's depictions of the Valley of Dry Bones, a lot of times the paintings are really dark, and I wanted to create one that communicated more of God breathing life into the dry bones. And so I started working on my painting, and in the middle of the painting, I had finished the background, which is like the four winds breathing the life into the lungs, and I was ready to do the bones. And I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to depict the bones? And I felt like God was calling me to extend my painting to, so I put out and just asked people if they wanted me to pray for them and be a part of my painting, to let me know. And so I started painting the names of, I probably had 30 to 40 people ask me to pray that God would breathe life into their situations. And so I started painting those names on the painting and praying over them. And when I was finished, I was like, this is beautiful. I originally thought I was going to cover it up, but I just ended up making the names obscure enough that you couldn't tell exactly who it was, but letting those people who were praying for God to breathe life into them, for their names to be the dry bones.
That's wonderful. That's an awesome idea, and it's an awesome piece. Melissa, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us and sharing your art with others.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Talking with Christos Collective artist Jennifer Bungie. With that being said, another really interesting piece is Christ is Risen, which is one of your pieces. Maybe you could, at this point, tell us a little bit about it, what it means to you, what it's representing, all of those things.
Sure. Well, so backing up a couple of years, we, in Christos Collective, we had decided that we would all paint or make art on the theme of the cross. Mm-hmm. So I was looking up different works that have already been made on the cross, and I saw that Bosch made Christ carrying the cross. Well, I already knew this piece, but I saw it again, and it's Jesus in the middle carrying the cross and just surrounded by people yelling, just commotion and anxiety. And so I really felt like that could be an influence for my piece on the cross. So, then this year we decided to do a follow-up series on the resurrection. So, that's when I painted Christ risen, and I went back to the early Renaissance artists, and I sort of took the theme from my first piece, Christ carrying the cross, and took it to the resurrection, where it's still a huge crowd of people, chaos, distraction, and then there's Jesus risen from the dead, and most people aren't even seeing it.
Too busy.
And so, yeah, so I feel like that's sort of how our culture is currently. We've heard that story, let's get on to the next thing. So I wanted to just kind of make my own little commentary on that.
That's great. Yeah. Have you had any feedback with the piece?
Yeah. Yeah, well, because we usually have an artist statement posted beside our work. But I'd like to try to keep, I try to keep my statement short so people can make their own conclusions and there has been some interesting, one guy came up to me and he was kind of mad. It seemed. I never met him before. But he'd seen my piece a couple of times, so he came to the art opening night and said, "How did you know to paint me in this picture?" And of course, it wasn't really him, but he felt convicted by one of the characters in the picture, because he felt distracted too about the whole resurrection story. So that was interesting.
So yeah. I think that's great. That means you probably hopefully snapped his attention so that he's thinking.
Yeah, hopefully.
Long term, maybe?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's wonderful. And thank you for taking the time to share your piece and for all the wonderful works that you do.
Thanks.
Talking with Christos Collective artist, Katina Lowe. Get to your piece, God is with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Emmanuel, God is with us. This is one of my more kind of blatantly religious works. Obviously, looking at it, it's God Jesus's hand reaching for another person's hand. So it was for an Advent guide that was published last year that talked about the titles of Christ. And Emmanuel, God is with us is one of those titles. And in this piece, like a lot of my pieces, I love to use color and shape to bring out really core human themes or colors that connote things that we know from just human archetype and knowledge in that way. So I have black, always kind of meaning like sin or struggle or evil, things that you don't want to be a part of. But I usually have the human form emerge from the blackness towards something good, because I like to add hope in all my pieces. So the black kind of transitions into a blue in this piece, and the blue is a hopeful area. Blue has been a very holy color throughout art history. And then I have white as a Holy Spirit kind of space, this beautiful, breathable space that the Holy Spirit gives you that's, not defined because it's a spirit. It can't be defined.
Right.
And then I always have gold as the signifier of God, deity, holiness. And so I try to merge all those colors together and give the viewer those presence senses as along with, just having the blatant idea of Jesus reaching down and holding someone else's hand, and I am with you, Emmanuel, God is with us. And for that piece in particular, with studying the titles of Christ for this Advent guide, I thought Emmanuel, God is with us was a really powerful concept in terms of just God is with us, God has been us, and he's right beside us in our struggle, no matter what it is, and he understands it because he was a human. So that was a very wonderful Advent theme that I had the opportunity to express and talk about visually, which was difficult because the titles of Christ were kind of difficult to wrap my head around. So I had to come to some concrete ideas first, and that's always for me color and shape. And then I added the hands in each of those pieces. There's hands that are represented as a symbol of Christ.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful piece, and thank you for walking us through it and sharing some of your experiences and your techniques. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Talking with Christos Collective artist Garrett Larson. With that being said, why don't we just go ahead and lead on, and you tell us a little bit about your piece, Lost Love.
So Lost Love was in a show about roughly a year ago, and basically one night I was just sitting outside in the middle of the night trying to figure out what to do and what to paint, and like with a lot of my art, it's related to love some sort of way or another, and I was having kind of like a bad week and a hard time, and I was too involved up here, and just letting little things just bother me and destroy me. And basically the one thing I realized was I was sitting out back outside just staring up at the stars, and I realized that take a breath, breathe in, and look up. Like, I grew up in South Dakota, so like in a country, and our night skies are beautiful up there. And so I finally like looked up and I realized I was like, hey, like the galaxy, the world, like I'm so small. Just look up there and like get lost. And Lost Love was kind of my ode to that, that me looking up, being lost and feeling like, hey, don't freak out. Like everything's going to be okay. So I felt like I had lost my love for a while, and it was my rekindle basically to my love of life. So it was just like take time, relax, smell the roses, enjoy the little things, and everything will be cool and good. So
That's wonderful. It's great to enjoy God, when you're looking at the stars or at the little things and you realize, wow, what a creator did all that. It makes, I guess you probably think about that sometimes when you're creating.
Yeah, and it's just like, like the galaxy, and then like, it's a beautiful painting, like sunrises and sunsets, like, like they are so beautiful, and like, it's like jealousy, but it's like so overpowering and powerful to have little things, and then like we take it for granted almost every day, like just seeing the sunrise, and it's usually like it's a beautiful masterpiece always, and then seeing the sunset, and then at night like the stars and the galaxy, it's just beautiful. And so yeah, it's just crazy what you consider and see as art.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you for sharing your heart and your imagination with us.
Yeah.